Hey, everyone, and welcome back. Today, we're going to talk about the Non Sequitur Show. And joining me today is Steve McRae, who used to be half of that outfit, and he actually started the thing and then got screwed out of it. So he's going to explain to us how that happened, and then the aftermath of actually winning the court case, where now Google will not accept the court documents because you can't get a hold of any humans ever with YouTube. So there's kind of a nice problem. Everything's just AIs. So you want to say hi to the people, Steve?
Yeah, sure. By the way, that was a brilliant synopsis. I think we're done. What else does to add to that?
Yeah, well, I guess we should probably explain the details. So maybe you should just start at the beginning and explain why did you start the channel? How did you start it? How did you get your partner Kyle involved and all that?
Sure. In about 2017, I was approached by Kyle R. Curtis to start a podcast. I had a couple of YouTube channels already. I had the Great Debate Community, and then I had my own personal channel, Steve McRae, that I did debates on. Philosophical discussions, scientific discussions. I would invite very expert opinions to come on, such as Dr. Mary Schweitzer, Dr. Hugh Ross, Dr. Cy Gart, and we would just have discussions where he enjoyed that, and he thought about trying to market it toward a podcast, and thought that was a brilliant idea. And so between my conversational levels and the context that I had and his ability to do graphics, we decided to start a podcast. That podcast became pretty successful pretty quickly, and I had talked to him about going to YouTube, saying, since I have two not greatly successful channels, but fairly well known, let's do it on YouTube as well. And I talked him into that. I started the channel, the Non Sequitur Show, on YouTube. And within the first couple of episodes, he wanted, or actually, I think it was actually before, it was actually, I think August. Let me think here. I'm trying to get the exact dates down. Somewhere on December 31st, 2017, I believe it was, that he asked to have the primary ownership transferred to him because of what's called SEO or search engine optimization, which I found out later had absolutely nothing to do with anything. So I had transferred the ownership to him. Well,
I guess that's kind of a huge point we probably should flesh out a little bit more there. How did he convince you to just turn over the ownership?
Well, because it's a good question, actually, because I didn't know what search engine optimization really was. And he knew how to make the things to where they would hit an algorithm and they would, be listed and basically promoted. And he also was going to do everything for tax reasons through his accountant, his CPA, that we found out later did not exist. Okay. And so I had my own account with Google Sense, right? Or AdSense through Google. And I was trying to figure out with him how I'm going to extricate my personal ad revenue from my own personal channel through Non Sequitur and through the taxes. And he said, you know what, I've got all that covered. Just give me primary ownership. And so I turned over primary ownership to him, figuring, okay, well, he'll figure it all out. And we had a 50-50 partnership. This has been established. And he later on had even admitted that we had a partnership, which if people watch the video, Death of Non Sequitur Show, they'll see him admitting that in a pre-show hangout that we had to one of our Non Sequitur shows. You've seen it. But he did convince me to do it. I didn't really think twice about it. Like I said, I was like, okay, it might be easier because he could figure out all the taxes properly because everything from the ad revenue would be under one thing rather than having to separate it from my personal one, which I figured probably would be pretty difficult to do. But I was okay if it needed to. But he was like, fine, no, I got a CPA to handle all that stuff.
Right.
So
how long had you known him at that time?
Not very long, a few months.
Okay, so you were kind of not aware of your risk-taking behavior there.
a little risky, but I told him I wanted to do something on a handshake. We had talked about forming a limited liability corporation, but neither one of us had any really assets to shield by a limited liability corporation. So we decided to do it without it. Now he formed a DPA and he sent a DBA to me to sign. I never did sign it. He said that he actually submitted these DBA. And said that I effectively, or no, I think his word was, I essentially signed it in theory or something. I was like, wait a minute. No, I did not sign this. He's like, well,
what the hell does that mean?
I have no idea. He's like, well, you essentially did or something. I'm like, no, I didn't. Found out he didn't actually file that DBA, but
well, of course.
Yeah. We had all the correspondence that it was a 50-50 partnership. That is trivial to just show the court. but I wanted something just like that. I didn't really want to have to go through the whole hassle of having a corporation and incorporating and have the articles of corporation. My dad had a corporation one time. He was a CEO, and he still got screwed out of $250,000.
Mm-hmm.
So it really doesn't help you much. I even asked my attorney, we decided to do this with a handshake and a verbal agreement. I have a written correspondence through email, and he's like, most people do it that way anyways. It's just not a cost effective to make it in some kind of huge formal business arrangement. It's still a business enterprise. And we did have it designated as a business enterprise through North Carolina Mandatory Complex Superior Court. We actually got the Chief Justice of North Carolina to sign off on that. So it was a business enterprise. It was considered a business under the statutes of North Carolina state law.
All right, but at that time, he basically seemed very trustworthy to you, and
yes.
he built up your confidence.
Absolutely, and nothing I'm going to do say is trying to smear him in any way. I know a lot of people, have tried to go after him. That's not my intent. My intent is to get the information out there about the history of the channel and why YouTube hasn't given it back to me. Now that I have
right. Yeah. Well, we're not here to start drama for drama's sake. We're just talking about what actually happened. So, yeah. Okay. So, he managed to do that, and the money was coming in.
The money was coming in. We were earning about $6,000 a month in total, which is pretty significant for a channel that's only been around for about a year and a half. We had about 35,000 subs. We had 6 million views. We had well over 250,000 podcast downloads, and we were getting a little bit of a known reputation for being one of the best, most fairest platforms out there. Matter of fact, the only channel that really kind of was a little more popular than us was the Drunken Peasants, who I'm friends with Ben and Billy. I'm on there about twice a month, and I'm thrilled to death that they've invited me to come on. But that was about the only channel that gave us any real competition. And we would stream, almost daily. We'd have flat earth discussions. We'd have, again, debates of all kind, flat earth and anti
right, and you invited
creationism and things
both sides, so you're not just sitting there talking in your echo chamber. You're actually having both sides on.
Yeah, I thought that was a better way to explain to people scientific literacy when you have somebody who's not very scientifically literate trying to say something like the earth is flat or drink your own urine or something, and and the other people in the scientific community going, no, this is wrong on multiple levels, and explaining why. I thought that was a kind of dynamic that worked really well for my channel, and so I brought that to the Non Sequitur show on that kind of format. That's what we kind of decided on. Yeah.
It's kind of nice. It brings up some opportunities for humor as well. So that there's that. Anyway, where were we? You're raking in the cash, so to speak.
Yeah, we were doing pretty well. We have a very, very loyal fan base. When it got to the time where I was supposed to be paid out, though, I wasn't getting any money, and I kept asking him, "Where's the money?" He said, the CPA had it. And when we asked who the CPA was, we got nothing. And this was myself and the producer, who was known as Bullinator. We couldn't get anywhere with him.
Right.
And so we figured something might be up here. We figured, why are we not getting any information of who the CPA is, where the contact information is, where the money is, and where the P&L reports are? Because I asked for the P&L reports numerous times. They were not forthcoming. So myself and the producer and another friend of ours named Red's Rhetoric, who's a flat earth debunker on YouTube, probably the premier flat earth debunker, we had a pre-show hangout with Kyle. And this was something about an hour before, well, it wasn't even an hour before, about a half hour before we were supposed to go live with the Flat Earther. And we had decided this would be the good time to ask him, because we weren't all three going to be together for a while. Red's, isn't part of the show, but he's on the show quite frequently. And so he thought it would be a good time to bring it up to him, and I agreed. So we were sitting there, and we were talking about it, and we waited for Kyle to come in. All recorded, many of our pre-shows recorded, and we could upload them for Patreons and have them for our own videos if we wanted to do something later on, behind the scenes kind of stuff.
Right.
And we asked him about this. We're asking him, what's going on with the channel, because he was taking the channel in a completely different direction. He had brought on about 4 other co-hosts that I was not consulted on. Now, you got to remember, this was a 50-50 general partnership. That meant that decision-making needed to be a 50-50 decision-making. Now, I allowed him to do some decision-making, especially when it came to the graphics and some other things. But As far as the co-host,
Right.
it was just me and him.
Well, yeah. There's a difference between just going along with it and then this guy just going unilateral.
Correct. Yeah, he was making those kind of decisions unilaterally rather than starting a separate channel to put some of his other shows on there, which he could have done. And he started to do, but he didn't follow through with that. He decided to bring on a couple of other YouTubers, most of which I did not really have any relationship with nor want one. I'm not going to get into who they are, but people that follow me for a long time can figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
But those co-hosts, in my opinion, were just denigrating the show. They were basically destroying it. They were not good at what they did. They weren't capturing the audience. And I noticed that he was scheduling less and less, even though I was scheduling people to come to the show. I was contacting people and I said, hey, you know what? We want you as a guest, because that's what I did. I booked people, find out what day you're available, and then message Kyle and we'll get your schedule. We'll come to find out he wasn't responding to any of them. He wanted to take it in a completely different direction, dealing with just pure, almost social justice type things. It was all going to be about atheism and gay activism. And not that I'm against any of those either by any stretch of imagination, but you can't take a whole show that was dedicated to having discussions about topics and having a dichotomous relationship between opposing viewpoints to have dialectics, and then all of a sudden turn it into this unilateral show about his own personal agenda.
Right.
And that's exactly what happened.
Yeah, that's a completely different. That's not what you agreed upon when you started this thing. So, I mean, it's not wrong to have a channel about that, but that's not what you got into this partnership.
Not what I signed up for.
Yeah.
Yeah, occasionally it was fine. Yeah, but it's something the whole channel took a turn to that. And people were noticing. People were asking me, hey, Steve, what's going on? Why aren't you being scheduled? I was supposed to get 4 regular shows plus 1 flat earth show, so 5 days a week, because we didn't want to do more than 5 days a week when we started. Matter of fact, we only wanted to do 2. But then he started doing 5 days a week, 6 days a week, 7, 8, 9, especially his own content. And I was like, this is just too much. And plus it's saturation. And I don't think he understood that concept. But I was fine with it as far as I had really little say in it, because what was I going to do? Just tell him you can't do it, because then he would just balk at it. And I did figure it was worth the fight. I wanted to pick my own battles. Mm-hmm. But it wasn't going anywhere. Those shows weren't going anywhere. And people were asking me, why the change of format? I'm like, well, I didn't know there was a change of format. This is unilaterally by him. But we asked him about that as well. And he basically said he's taking a different direction. If I don't like it, sue him. The show with him, he was Non Sequitur show, his words. And we were like, really, this is the direction you want to go on this. And so what he did was he locked me and the producer out of the channel.
Right.
Basically took us off as managers. As soon as he did that, there was a lot of legal things that had happened. And so I fortunately have a friend who's very well off, and he decided to contact me and say, hey, if you take him to court, I will pay for all your legal things, and then we'll get it back from him through the court system. Mm-hmm. I jumped on that clearly, because there's several $1,000s involved in this lawsuit. The channel was worth about $100,000 by the time it was at its max peak. And I figured that was on probably a 2 to 3 year fair market value. And it was raking in $6,000 a month. It probably made about well over $60,000. And so
right.
half of that, if I do the math right, 30,000.
Yeah.
Right. And that's obviously, that's the revenue streams, including the AdSense and the Patreon. But still, it was a minimum about 30 grand owed to me. We are now suing in court. We have filed a lawsuit in North Carolina, mandatory complex superior court, for the channel to come back, all platforms related to the channel. And we are also suing for treble damages and court costs. Mm-hmm. The treble damages is based upon what he's owed to me, the principal, which is 30 grand times 3 would be 90. And I figure about 10 grand in court costs. So it's looking about $100,000 plus any additional things that we're suing for each count that he has tentatively admitted to. And I mean tentatively admitted to, because when we filed, we sent something to him, right? You get served, and he didn't respond. He didn't file a response. Now he said he did. He said he filed something with the court. That was an outright lie. I'm going to call it a lie, because I will show you the court papers. No such paperwork exists. Right. And so
it's a weird thing to lie about, because obviously everything gets filed when it's a court case. There's no I did it, and they didn't actually record it. That doesn't happen in court cases. Well,
it was bizarre. Yeah, it was bizarre. He started running a narrative that the reason why he didn't pay me because he said I was defrauding the Veterans Administration. Now I am a veteran. I spent 6 years in the Navy. I spent 3 tours in the Gulf. I did 3 Westpacks. I was honorably discharged, 4.0 evals, all across the board. And I get free medical from the VA. There's some other medical stuff involved. I've explained it all a million times. There was absolutely no fraud. This came out, and the co-hosts that were with him, the 4 co-hosts that had gone on with him, 4 of them all announced through Twitter and or other media that Kyle had lied to them. All of them said Kyle promised them things and lied to them, and they were done with him. Although they never admitted that I was right, and they never admitted that he took $60,000, which he did. That's the fans' money that was generated from the revenue streams for Kyle and I, and some of it was supposed to go to Bull, our producer. I gave him some funds from my own pocket, but we're hoping to at least try to get him on it. But I'm going to compensate him through other means when we get the channel back. But that money was the fans, and the fans want to know what happened to that money. 6,000 fans from the Non Sequitur show left the channel, came to my channel, and they've been asking me to try to figure out what the hell happened. And that's why we generated this lawsuit. And
all right, before you do that, let me just
sure.
Let me just get some super chats here. We got 2. We got 2 from Donald J. Trump. I'm sure it's a real guy, saying "Make non-sec great again," which is pretty much what you're doing.
Trying.
And then he says "Crooked Kyle at it again." So there you go.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I'm not going to smear the guy, but his reputation is shot. There's no question about that. There's no recovery when you lie to the internet to this degree and you steal $60,000. And I will use the word steal now because we got a default judgment. He was found guilty on 7 counts, I believe. And I say you were guilty because I don't know what other word to use because he didn't file a response, which means again he effectively or tentatively agrees without contest that these were the case. And it was fraudulent conversion, unjust enrichment, breach of fiduciary duty, breach of contract, and 1 or 2 other things. But each one of those is up to $25,000 per count.
Right.
So we might actually get him on up to $25,000 on those counts as well. That's what we're going to have to decide later on. We are now asking the court for him to turn over the books and to turn over the channel. So I have a default judgment saying that, yes, these are uncontested and he committed fraud. And this goes into the whole YouTube thing about trying to get in touch with YouTube to get my channel back.
Yeah, I can imagine that's a whole other ball of wax too.
Nobody works for them.
I mean, nobody can get in touch with them for any reason.
You have a better chance of contacting the Pope.
Probably.
Yeah, it's nearly impossible. I mean, the only person I've ever heard of even getting anything back from YouTube, even like on Twitter from Team YouTube. Was it Team Support, YouTube Support, was Markiplier, Markiplier. And he has 25 million subs, and he had hundreds of people that got their channels taken away for some stupid reason. And he able to have the clout to get that fixed. But someone like myself, who has a court order that says default judgment, he committed fraud, that channel should be yours. I can't even get anybody even look at the documentation. I've sent it numerous times. And I got one thing back when they said, can you attach the documents? I said, fine. I attached the documents again. Didn't hear back from them. And the only thing I've ever got back from them, it says, this only is for copyright something or other. Go to our help page on it's like, no, the help page doesn't do anything.
It's a cookie cutter response. Yeah, from a bot probably.
Yeah, so it's ridiculous trying to get anybody over there to evaluate whether I should wait in order to get a direct order from the judge for YouTube to turn over the channel, or if they agree because of a default judgment that fraud was committed in acquisition of my channel, that it should be returned to the original owner and set to back to default. Because if somebody takes your channel and it's fraudulent, I've heard they have a way to set it back to original settings kind of thing, right? As far as the original owner, the original email attached to the account.
Well, of course. Yeah. This must happen a lot, so they must have some sort of system for it. It's just that, yeah, you can't get a hold of them.
Yeah, that's the issue I'm having. So what I did was I put the email in a tweet. I tagged YouTube and YouTube. What is it? Team YouTube.
Team YouTube.
Yeah, and I've had people retweeted that to try to boost the signal. No go. They still haven't responded to it either in the email or on Twitter.
What's the normal procedure for this? What do you? What does your lawyer say? Like, how do they do this, or how did they do this in the old days before emails and stuff?
He's just as frustrated. He had no luck with YouTube either.
Mm-hmm.
And when I told him, I said, "Well, I'm going to go ahead and write email to YouTube and tell them, hey, we have a default judgment, and that hopefully that'll be good enough." He's like, "Yeah, do whatever you got to do, and if that doesn't work, then we'll wait for the motion of default judgment and the order to turn over the books in the channel from Kyle. And if that doesn't work, then we can get an order directed to YouTube. And if they violate that, then in theory, we could actually civilly sue them as well. Because right now, YouTube's not in any violation of anything. There's no directive from the court to turn the channel over to me. However, my argument has been it was fraudulently taken from me. How do you fix this, YouTube? Give it back to me, because the court has determined that was fraud. That has already been entered and done.
Right. There's no reason to let it go that far. They shouldn't have to have an actual lawsuit against themselves before they act.
But that's the thing, though. They don't want to do anything until somebody makes them. Somebody forces them to do something. Some action is taken. And I've noticed that. I mean, the same thing happened with the whole Markiplier thing. Nothing happened to rectify the situation with people losing their account, not just their YouTube, but their Google account as well. And when they would appeal it, what happened? Nothing.
Nothing.
They said, sorry, this has been appealed, but you know what? You can't appeal this. It's done. You're screwed. And then Markiplier gets involved and said, wait a minute here. And now they go, oh yeah, we really messed up on this one. They got a real human involved. Matter of fact, I heard that they actually got in touch with like the CEO of YouTube. I don't know if that's true or not, but somebody took notice of this. And so
but
for the low guys like us,
that took Markiplier to do it with his enormous reach.
And it's wonderful he has the power to do that. I mean, that at least somebody can get something done with YouTube.
Yeah. And he was not happy. I saw the video.
No. Yeah.
All right. So what's the next step?
Well, the next step is we just recently, as of today, I submitted an affidavit. The judge asked for an affidavit of statement of facts attesting that everything I've said so far is the truth relating to the channel. I submitted that. I had it notarized. It's sent. It's filed. So we did a modified motion for order of judgment default and a proposed order, which basically just kind of reiterates everything, has the affidavit as Exhibit A, and the order that the channel itself to Kyle, he has 14 days to turn the channel over to me and to turn over the books, all the financial records. That hasn't been signed yet. Hopefully they'll be signed tomorrow. So if Kyle then doesn't turn over the channel to me, we will go after him civilly as far as civil bench warrant and have him in contempt of court and then dragged in front of the judge, and the judge can ask him, why have you done this? But I'm trying to get the channel back as soon as possible, because every day I'm losing money on that, and I don't want to wait another 3-4 weeks for Kyle to do it, or criminally liable, or civilly liable.
But let's be honest though, or realistic. Let's be realistic. There's not going to be any books, are there?
No, I seriously doubt it.
No, he's probably just spent the money, right?
I would be highly impressed if there was much money left out of that $60,000. I know that he spent it on rent. He told me. I know he spent it on travel because he told me. And I know that he bought a lot of equipment. And I also know that a lot of equipment was bought for him. There was an Amazon wish list that I didn't know anything about until a fan told me about it. He never neglected to tell me about that. And I know that people bought software for him, and I had them contact me and say, what did you buy for the channel? And I was actually quite surprised how many people had purchased stuff for the channel that I was unaware of. This is why his graphics were pretty good, because he was bought the entire Adobe suite and the whole 9 yards. And he was well taken care of. Now me, I was wearing taped headsets. I had to buy a laptop, a refurbished one for $188. I didn't see a dime of profit for a year and a half.
There was I took a look at the channel, and there was a point where his sort of studio or whatever started to get very fancy.
And he started dressing better, had $100 haircut.
A new suit and everything. When was that? Did that coincide with you having all that money?
As the money went up, his backgrounds got much better. And by the way, he says those suits cost $12. Now I'll tell you this: I was in retail for years. I worked for Kohl's. I sold suits, and the cheapest blazer I ever bought was 80% off for like $48.
Mm-hmm.
You like suits? Have you ever seen that quality of suit for $12?
No.
Yeah, it's just unimaginable to me. And I can't imagine Kyle ever buying things just off some kind of off the rack secondhand store, because even them, those blazers are going to be way more than $12.
Yeah, that seems no.
Yeah, I don't buy that. And by the way, I don't know if it's a $100 haircut or not. That's kind of a
no. But the point is, you could definitely see. Okay, there's a lot of spending going in here. You got the lights and all that. He probably bought all those Philips Hues to get all the
no. The lights were bought from him from a fan.
Oh, okay. But I
have the email from the guy that bought it. He was one of my Patreons now. So yeah, that was I didn't know that.
Well, there you go.
I bought my own green screen, paid for that.
Mm-hmm.
I paid for everything out of my own pocket. Luckily though, somebody had bought me a computer, microphone, and headset now, so I'm taking care of that. But I've never been one of those people to say, "Hey, buy me." But he was, and he didn't tell me. So there was a lot of money invested in equipment too that we're going to have to factor in at some point, because I want justice for the fans.
Yeah, so he was getting a lot of perks. That probably should have been split somehow,
Yeah, especially when he says, because when people go watch the video, the Death of Non Sequitur show, he says something to the effect, well, Steve, can you do the graphics? Can you do the music? And I was like, well, if I had $2,000 with Adobe software to do the graphics, then yes, I probably could. I do work with HitFilm. I work with Blender a little bit, not that proficient, but enough where I can make simple intros and things of that nature if I really needed to. But that was his area of expertise and his forte to do graphics. And that's what he brought to the table, right?
That's not really why you go to a podcast anyhow. So come on, let's be real. It's
true.
It's a nice thing. It's kind of like my videos. Sure, I have some graphics, but that's not really why people come back.
Yeah, I mean, you have the kind of content, even though you have brilliant graphics, somebody can just sit and listen to it and enjoy the content.
Right. I try to make it like a radio show, so that you don't actually have to stare at the screen. And for your kind of content, that's like a no-brainer, of course. Lots of people are probably just going to turn off the screen, put the phone back in their pocket and listen to it while they're working out or something.
Yeah, that's why I found out actually what mostly happened. There were people that left comments. If you go to the Non Sequitur Show channel, a lot of comments on there, and they're vicious. But one of the comments, or I should say multiple comments, said, hey, you know what? We didn't even watch the graphics that much. We just put it on and then listen to it as they worked throughout the day or doing housework. And that's how the podcast works. We had 180 episodes of the podcast. I cut every single one of those, put the bumpers on, and did all of that. He created the music. He created the bumper, which probably didn't take very long. But it took me a good hour to 2 hours a day to do those podcasts, because I had to download the video. I had to, put it in an audio software thing. I had to take out the ums and some other things and add bumpers, and I'd render it. Then I had to upload it to Fireside. I had to put it through some compression program to get it to like 96 bit rate, and then put it to it was a process.
Right, of course. Yeah. Well, the point is you're partners, and you're supposed to split it. Yeah, it wasn't like like he was doing all the work. Far from it. Yeah. So that wasn't that like a meme from your little battle there, that he said something, he's doing 95% of the work or something?
Yeah, he said that he basically did 95% of the work, and that left, I think, 5% for me, I guess. And then Bullinator, what the hell? What did Bullinator, the producer, do? I don't know. Bullinator was like an integral part of our show. I mean, he was involved in the show. He did all the vMix softwaring. He did all the audio stuff. I mean, he was an integral part of the show, and just to cut him out, because he was blocked at the same time I was, because he's a friend of mine, and he took my side, not so much because I was his friend, but I was in the right, and he knew it. He'd access to all the information and all the emails and basically the history of the channel. So he knew that I was completely correct in everything I was saying. And so Kyle blocked him as well.
So do you think that's when he realized that the jig is up and he just locked you out?
I think his ego got the best of him, because he started playing on other channels. He started going on like Faithless Forum, and he met a bunch of people, and he was on the Atheist Experience for the the Atheist Community of Austin. They were taking note of him, even though I've been on their Discord as a guest. but people may know that I have a little bit of history with Matt Dillahunty. Nothing against the guy. I just think that he makes some philosophical issues that I disagree with, but I think he's done great for the atheist community. But there was a little bit of tension there at one time. Well, he got to know them and Arn Ra, who I brought to the show. Arn was my friend, and then I brought him to the show, and him and Kyle kind of like hit it off because they have the same philosophical positions, I guess, even though they're I wouldn't consider them to be philosophers, let's put it that way. And so I think that attention, that sudden notoriety, that sudden influx of people adoring him, he really let that go to his head. And when he was saying that he was like 95% of the channel and that he was non-sequitur, I think he really honestly believed that. And so when he bumped me and the producer, I think he really thought that he was going to be in the right. I think that he thought that, you know what, I don't need Steve anymore, even though we're partners. I'll just buy him out. It doesn't work that way. So his fatal mistake was at that moment when he locked me out of the channel and said, sue him. Even though at the time I said I can't, because I thought to myself, I can't really more. So I didn't have the money to do so, even though we had a verbal agreement. I was like, there's no way I could do this because I don't have the money to do it. And he knew that. But luckily, my friend jumped in on that. And I think that's what thwarted him. He did not expect somebody worth a lot of money to come help him out.
That must have been a cold shower.
Yeah.
Holy shit.
And again, I thought he probably thought he was going to get away with all this. He thought people were going to buy the narrative that I was defrauding, and people thought that I was.
Oh yeah.
And like a handful of people did.
Of course, there's always going to be a divide, no matter what topic you're talking about. But he probably thought that he could just swamp you because he had like a bigger channel now, since he's taken over the channel, and he could just put out more bad information about you, right?
Yep, that's exactly what he was doing too. He was trying to attack my credibility, and I think that was a bad mistake because I had been on for a very long time on YouTube, and even though I didn't have a exceptionally big channel, I had built up a very loyal fan base, and these people have known me for a very long time. And I also have everything public record from Facebook from when I was like 6 years old, from my babysitters, that are on there. Right. I have a long-standing reputation of being honest and ethical, and so for him to attack that, especially a veteran saying that I'm defrauding the VA that I get for free with no evidence whatsoever.
Where did that come from?
Because initially, when he wanted me to sign the limited liability corporation, I wanted to look it over. And then when we started having issues one time, and he had told me that all he had to do was take me off the limited liability corporation. And I was like, what are you talking about? We didn't file that. He's like, yeah, we did. And I was like, no, I didn't sign anything for that. He's like, yeah, you effectively or essentially or virtually, I don't remember what word he used, did. And I was like, no, it does not work that way. And I said, I didn't want that because I wanted to look it over. You're supposed to send me the paperwork snail mail so I can look it over, because I didn't know how it would affect my medical, because I had a secondary medical as well. And the secondary medical was income based. And so not my VA was, but my secondary, which was a few hours closer. That was the only reason why I was worried about that, because I didn't want to have to go 4 hours away for surgery.
Right.
And so I wanted to look it over to see if it was worth it. I was like, okay, how much money are we really going to be making here? Neither one of us thought we were going to be making the money we were making. So if it was just going to be $100 a month or something like that, yeah, no big deal, whatever. But if it was over a certain threshold, I was like, I had to think to myself, is it worth, sacrificing my medical to go 4 hours further? Well, yeah, probably, but I still wanted to look it over. So I knew what I could do. I wanted to have my options open to me. He eliminated all that. He didn't give me any snail mail. He didn't send me anything but through the email, the DBA, which again said general partnership. That was intent to have a general business partnership. And so when I told him, this could have, I wanted to look it over for my medical, he took that and ran with the narrative to his sycophants. And I'm going to call him that because these people stuck with him for thick and thin, even though he was lying the entire time. They know this now, but they were like, oh, well, Steve can't get his money because it was fraud, and his lawyer has to look it over before he can send me money. I'm like, does this narrative even make sense to anybody?
No. I mean, it doesn't, because obviously you hadn't been paid.
I haven't been paid. I couldn't even claim anything. And a lawyer's not going to, he said he was sending every video to his lawyer. I'm like, lawyer's not going to sit there and watch every single video. It doesn't work that way. And even worst case, I could have committed murder and I've still owed that money. Okay. You cannot legally hold somebody's money from a general partnership. Huge mistake, because when I asked him for the P&L reports, which are the books, You have 24 hours to give them to a partner. He failed to do so. This means he's liable for treble damages. So he made mistakes across the board and then tried to spin it on me. And it just was one lie after another compounded upon one lie. Now, again, the 4 co-hosts that were brought on board, all of them have denounced him, and all of them said he was lied to about that. And they've said there was no fraud. They've seen one of them at least has said they've seen all the evidence and said, yeah, Kyle was full of crap on all that.
Right. Obviously. Clearly. Yeah. I mean, you can't hold someone's
I have
money,
a VA card.
back.
It's still, it's legit. Okay.
Yeah, you can't hold someone's money back and then say they're using that money to defraud the state. It's like, what?
You and I, it makes sense because we're kind of critical thinkers. But the handful of people that didn't understand that because they just didn't like me personally, didn't want to believe that. That's why 95%, and I'm going to use that number again, but it was about 95% or more, left the channel and came to me because they said, yeah, this narrative is just nonsensical. This is not making any sense what you're saying, Kyle. But then he would go into Discord and he would tell people, oh, we're working on this. We filed a counter lawsuit. The only reason why Stephen hasn't gotten his money is because he talks about it on air, and my lawyer is recording all this and going through it, and we're filing a civil defamation suit, and so he's just prolonging it. All that was crap. It was every bit of that was crap.
So going back to the court case, did he ever show up, or any lawyer show up, or anything? Nothing.
He never had a lawyer. What we found out, because he went on Discord this last time, he's kind of absconded with the money now. He's kind of vanished. But the last time he went on Discord, he even said, well, I really never retained a lawyer. I had a friend who knows law that I Skyped with, basically.
Okay. Well, if you don't even show up, then why even do that?
Yeah. So he didn't have a lawyer that he retained, and he didn't file any paperwork. I can screen share and actually show people the legal things if they want to go check it out themselves. I'm more than happy to do that if you want.
Well, if you got anything pertinent,
I won't really go through each one. People can do it on their own. I'll put the place where they can find it. It's there. It's under mandatory complex business case. Judge L. Gale. You just search for McRae. But let me screen share this real quick. Blah blah blah.
Yeah, you put that in the chat, right? So,
right. Okay, so you can see this, right?
Now we can, I think.
All right. So this basically shows the documents of the court case, and like I said, you just go to mandatory complex business court, James L. Gale McRae. Let me refresh this real quick, and then it'll bring up dockets. And the first one is the complaint. This is ECF, which is electronic something filing. This was a complaint. Notice of designation, which was a designation by the actual Supreme Court judge in North Carolina to designate it as a complex business case. That was actually designated and approved. He didn't file anything, so we got a motion of file judgment, and that was through the court order. That the order was given. We now have a couple proposed orders in there. Not going to go through all these, but the motion for the entry for the default judgment and proposed order basically says, because he was found fraudulent, breach of duty, and all those other things, the channel needs to be reverted back to me. That he has to revert it back to me. He has 14 days after this gets signed to revert it back to me. But the big thing you should notice here is in the filing, not one thing was from his lawyer or from him.
Right.
He filed absolutely nothing. And so people found out about this because they told him, hey, we have access to these records. These are public records. I don't think he realized that. And I think he thought that he could get away with this lying because nobody would ever be able to fact check him.
Yeah, well, that's naive. Especially in this day and age.
Well, and also it happens really quickly how these filings go through. Usually back in the day when you did something in the court, they had to put it on microfiche. They had to scan it. It took a long time to get it to be a public record. So he probably figured there were maybe several months that he had to try to draw this out. And for what reason, I do not know. But you can see he never filed anything. And my lawyer had never heard from anything from him or his lawyer. We offered settlements. I offered to give him 50% of the channel in a perpetuity type relationship where he goes start something else. So I can bring in a different co-host, and he would get revenue from the non-sequitur show channel and from any side projects that he wanted to do.
Right.
He turned that down.
It's kind of a self-destructive behavior, isn't it?
There was a lot of self-destructive behavior, and I have my suspicions as to why. But again, I think a lot of it was ego driven, and he made the show about him, and that's something that the fans didn't want. And the fact that he thinks he's, I guess, entitled to 100% of the profit, because even the merchandise we have, the Teespring, he has, things with my face on it, like socks and shirts. We had, a ton of merchandise. And I actually was the one that brought to his attention, say, hey, you know what? There's a merchandise thing called Teespring. Why don't we look into that? We can draft some things up and be part of the business enterprise. He was totally fine with that. But then he said, no, I designed these things. I'm taking 100% of it. And he literally said that in the Death of Non Sequitur show, if people go watch it. Now, I have some own merch, and I'm not going to shill this really, but I mean, like my new co-host that I do on my own channel called Caffeine Corner, she made that. It's called Smug. Because I guess
a little bit of a dad joke there.
Yeah. Well, it's actually Matt Dillon. He calls me Smug. He thinks I'm smug, so we kind of made a joke about it. But there's stuff like that. So we had non sequitur stuff like this and merchandise, and he literally said he was taking 100% of it. I'm like,
well, that's not how businesses work.
Yeah, it's like none of this is how this works. So, anyways, long story short is I needed to get some signal boost to YouTube to try to at least them get notice of my documentation that is a default judgment saying that this was fraud involved. That's not disputed. Now, granted, I do not have a motion to Kyle to turn me over the channel yet, hopefully tomorrow, nor do I have a motion of a default judgment that the facts are what they are as far as the material facts. Although I have an affidavit in the latest one that people can go read where I just had it notarized and signed that was submitted and filed.
Right.
Now, I don't think that should make a difference to YouTube because, again, under fraud, that channel was taken from me fraudulent. That has been established.
Yeah.
YouTube should give me back the channel. But until a human sees it, I don't know what to do.
Well, what did your lawyer say there? Can't you just send a certified letter to their legal department?
That's probably what we're going to end up doing. What I'm probably going to end up doing is that I'm going to wait for these last two orders to get signed, where Kyle has 14 days to turn over the financials and the channel. And I'm going to print everything up. I'm going to put it in a manila folder, and I'm going to send it certified mail to San Bruno headquarters. And that way they actually physically have to sign for it. Now, that's going to take some time. So again, I'm just trying to expedite this through YouTube and do everything possible to have it done as quickly as possible. If I have to wait a few more weeks, obviously that's great, but I still think there needs to be heightened awareness of this type of situation with YouTube where you just effectively cannot get anything done with them.
Right. Yeah, it is. It's sort of a catch-22, isn't it? Anyway, we got a super chat here. Van Flyheight says, did Kyle's cooking channel go anywhere? I have no idea what that is.
Yeah, Kyle started a separate channel. He started a couple ones. One, he started at Homies. He started with that with Mr. Atheist. That didn't go anywhere. I'll just say Mr. Atheist is one of the 4 co-hosts that was streaming to my channel. And I think I can't say unlawfully, but unethically streaming to my channel because there was a cease and desist there that he knew about and he didn't care. And I still think that he helped actively cover up the theft of $60,000. But it was called Tastecraft. It was a cooking show that he was going to do with the other co-host, Caitlin Chloe, which was a Godless Engineer's wife. And that didn't go anywhere. Matter of fact, he was supposed to do that on October 1st. It didn't launch. And it already has several thousand dislikes. Has one video on it that's like 1 minute, a trailer, has 1,000 dislikes and a ton of comments. And by the way, I'm just gonna put this out there. Anybody who's following me knows this. I've never asked any of my followers at any time to go downvote a video or leave hateful comments ever to anybody.
Right.
And so that's nothing that I do. I don't have this army that people think that I have. I have loyal fans, but I don't command them at will. I don't ask them to do anything. And I don't even like downvoting videos like that. Because if I do get the channel back, it's going to have a bunch of downloaded videos, but because Non Sequitur, the last, 12 videos or so just got massively downvoted. But the comments on it were really, really bad because I tried to explain to Kyle in some implicit way during the pre-show on the Death of Non Sequitur show, this is going to affect you. I said, this is going to affect your reputation. Because I even said, how do you think this is going to affect you? And he's like, well, it probably will a little bit, but people will get over it. And I'm like, no, they don't get over losing $60,000 is supposed to go somewhere else. And I don't think he had understood the power of the internet, because had I not had that video of him admitting we had 50% agreement, that it was in perpetuity and the whole 9 yards, it kind of would have been effectively my word against his in the public arena. And he wanted it in the public arena. He wanted the public to judge on it. But that video just, it proved everything I was saying, and it effectively destroyed his reputation in what, 50 minutes that video is? Just destroyed it. And I didn't want to see that happen. I really didn't, because I would have liked to continued to work with him in some way, I guess. But he had asked me later on, he had asked me to come back to the channel, by the way. He really did ask me to come back and said, I'll give you the 4 days and the flat earth, and we'll continue the 50%. And I told him to stuff it. I already started legal proceedings. I'm like, no, I don't trust you.
No, of course not. Of course not.
So I was done, because I think he realized he screwed up, because he said, hey, you know what? Maybe we were just a little bit hot-headed kind of thing. Maybe, I was a little bit impulsive. And I'm like, well, you know what? Your impulsiveness is going to cost you, because I offered every reasonable thing. I offered for months, to get some money. I'm like, just tell me what's going on.
How many months did you wait for that? That was a long time, right?
I was very, very, very generous in that, and because he said wait till tax day, and I thought that made sense. I'm like, look, I want to make sure the taxes are done right. I even have correspondence with him saying I got to make sure taxes are done right. I screwed up on state taxes once in my own life, well over a decade ago, and it was only for a couple $100. Let me tell you, they get their money.
Oh yeah,
they will hound you till you die. You will sell a kidney to pay off your tax debt if you need to. Yeah. So I was making sure that all taxes were taken care of properly. And he said that they all were. Now, here's the problem. I don't know how he did the taxes. I don't know what he filed, because I don't have any access to the financials. And people say, well, you were on the channel for a while, so you at least know how much the channel made. A little bit, but that's not what a P&L report is. A P&L report is all your profit and losses and your net income, including how much you pay for things like Fireside, how much you pay for advertising, because we're doing that on Facebook. It has all your information, financials. That's what doing the books is. If you have a Peachtree, or if you have, I've used that. I've used QuickBooks, something along those lines. I don't think he knew how to do accounting. I took accounting in college, but I don't think he did. I don't think he knows accounting.
I mean, it sounds like there is no such thing. It's probably just smoke screen.
Probably. But yeah, like I said, if I just can get this kind of signal boost a little bit so people know what's going on, if they can go to that tweet and maybe tweet it out or retweet it so YouTube can at least take notice. And if you go watch the Death of Non Sequitur show, you can basically see what's going on in that show. I should fill in all the information, but I want people to know what happened.
Go ahead and put your tweet there in the chat as well, if you want people to see that.
Let me see if I can find it. That might take a few. I tweet a lot. I've kind of known on Twitter to tweet an awful lot.
Did you pin it or something?
No, the one I have pinned is calling out Mr. Atheist, actually. I'm going to leave that one up there, though, for personal reasons. But let me see here. I will find it. But go ahead. And then while I'm finding that, I can scroll back here. I'm sure it can't be too long ago.
Oh, no, I was just going to say you could just leave your Twitter handle if you don't want to look it up.
I'll put it in the live chat. It's real simple. Steve at just my name with an underscore. That's it. So I'm sure they can go find it. I guess I could pin it once I find it.
Well, I mean, look it up if you really want people to.
I'll pin it. I found it.
To retweet it, you should give them an address, because otherwise they'll be like, no, I'll do that later. No, and then I forget.
It's just there's a couple tweets on it, so I got to make sure which one's the best. All right. I'll do it right now. I'll pin this one, so that way they don't have to go hunt for it. At least it's something with YouTube on there.
Right.
Team YouTube, I think, is the thing, right?
Team YouTube, yeah.
Yeah. I pinned it.
So copy that address and put in the chat.
Awesome. Thank you. Copy. There we go. All right. Well, I mean, I think that's kind of everything in a nutshell. It's kind of the too long didn't read version. This is going to be, I think, a huge thing once it's resolved, because it's $100,000 channel. It's nothing to be balking at. It's not like I'm doing this for peanuts, right? I mean, this was a $30,000 cut.
Well, it doesn't really matter how much money it is. If you get screwed,
it's a matter of principle too.
Yeah, if you get screwed, you're gonna get pissed, and you're gonna get even.
I'm trying to keep my emotions in check. I'm pretty a balanced guy, and I really want to keep it about the facts of the matter.
Mhm.
And so I have a feeling when all is said and done, I'm probably going to be really livid at some point. You know what I'm saying? But I'm trying to keep that in check until it's all
Well,
done, because I want to maintain just the facts as much as possible. It's
yeah, of
hard though.
course.
It ain't easy.
Of course, but I mean, you have to strike back somehow if you get screwed. That's just the way it is.
Well, that's why I want the channel back. Once we get the channel back, there will be retribution of some sorts, because I will be holding everybody accountable. I will be having everything I possibly can release, including maybe some correspondence, but I will be holding the co-hosts that were on the channel that I think effectively covered up this fraud. I'm going to name them. I don't care. It's Mr. Atheist, Godless Engineer, and Caitlin Chloe. The reason people know that is because they were on the channel. So I hold them personally responsible for the downfall of the Non Sequitur show. I hold them personally responsible for falsely accusing me of fraud, and I hold them personally responsible for helping Kyle get away with it, because they did.
All right. I don't know who these people are, but well, there you have it.
Well, I appreciate you trying to signal boost for me on it. I hope more YouTubers will take note of it, and at very least recognize that getting in touch with YouTube to do anything like this, to do what's right, is one of the most god awful things ever imaginable that you would ever have to accomplish, because there literally is nobody to talk to, and it's frustrating for us content creators.
It affects everyone who has to deal with YouTube in that sense. So I'm surprised that they don't have a better way of doing that. But it makes sense in terms of you can't get a hold of them for anything. So I guess that's maybe an internal policy of theirs, that they just don't divulge. Like, yeah, let's just make it as hard as possible for people to contact us.
I think they do it on purpose. Sure, they want it automated as much as possible. Now there is a union forming. There's a collection of contract, but we'll see what happens there, where maybe they get some creator rights. But until then, we're at their mercy, which is
that's a long time off before that gets off the ground, I think. But it's good that someone's trying something.
Yep. So I'm just looking over the live chat here. If there's I know we got 6 minutes or something like that we wanted to keep it down to. So if there's any questions, by all means, I will answer them. If you can't answer them now or ask them now, just message me on Twitter, DM, or send me a tweet, or leave a comment on the Death of the Non Sequitur show. I check those comments regularly, and I'll try to answer them. I've been so transparent as possible, which I think has been helpful immensely. People say, well, why'd you take this public? And I was like, well, if I don't take it public, then it's going to be he said, she said kind of thing, and he's going to be running my channel for the last 3 or 4 months. And I'm like, that's not going to happen.
Right.
So I made the decision with Bullinator and Reg Rhetoric, we need to go public on this, and we want the court of opinion to weigh in. And he agreed. He was like, well, yeah, people might believe you, but you know what, for the most part, they're going to kind of forget about it, and you'll be kind of just forgot about him. Like, oh, okay. I think that was his attitude. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Let's see if anyone has any questions about it. What do you say, chat? Anything you want to know?
Chat are actually people that I know. So they've been following this for a very long time, and they have a vested interest in getting down to the reasons why $60,000 are missing, and reasons why Mr. Atheist, Godless Engineer, and Caitlin Chloe, in my opinion, helped cover that up by falsely accusing me of crimes I didn't commit, like fraud.
Right. The ex Hindu atheist says, "Can you explain where you got Tanamount? What the hell is that? Tanamount?
You got Tanamount. You're suing.
Oh, Tanamount.
Oh, the amount. Yeah, sure.
The amount.
Yeah, that's a good question. Before I was kicked off the Non Sequitur Show channel, you're a manager, so there's analytics there. Now, that's not the actual books, right? AdSense gives you a payment every month. So there's a record there that you would take that AdSense and you would put them in the P&L report. That's going to be your income. But the AdSense is based somewhat off your YouTube will give you an estimate, right? So when you go into your creative studio, it'll give you an estimate of that. Well, the last number I saw on there was, and I'm not going to give the exact amount because I can't, I don't know it, but I remember it being somewhere between 45,000 and 49,000, somewhere in that ballpark. And so let's assume 49,000, because let's even assume 45. It went on for 2 months after that. So we were earning, like $5,000 a month, give or take. So we're just at 50,000 of that channel earned just in ad revenue, super chat, and all that. Half of that's 25,000. Okay. But Patreon was between $1,000 and $2,000 a month I was earning. Okay, because I saw that as well one time when I was on Patreon. He got rid of me on Patreon as well. A long time earlier, changed the password, and I just never got it back. And so you figure 10, 12 months, whatever, 15 months at $1,000, $2,000 a piece, that's going to be around 60,000 minimum, not including like $1,000, $2,000 from Streamlabs. So I'm just at the very long range. That's $60,000 right there. That's $30,000 owed to me, plus an additional $10,000 in court costs, plus additional, like I said, we're suing for treble damages under North Carolina state statutes. But the primary balance, I cannot imagine it being less than $30,000 in any way, shape, or form, just off the lowest possible numbers I can imagine from what I saw when I did have some access to the information. Although, again, that's not the books. I can't be for certain until he factors in how much he spent for Facebook and some other things for ad revenue stuff.
Yeah, you're probably going to have to get his bank records to ever find out.
Oh yeah, we are. We're going to subpoena all that eventually. I think I have a feeling. Yeah.
Well, the ex-Hindu atheist says that the question was for the trolls in the chat, but you got an answer anyhow. So there you go.
Yeah, that's how I came to that number. Now, when you sue in a superior court, it's got to be at least $25,000 or higher. So the bare minimum is $25,000 for superior court. The lowest amount you can sue for is $25,000.
Well, you're way over that. So
I'm way over that. Yeah. And so what'll happen is if he doesn't release the books, I'm going to have to give an estimate that I think is appropriate. And we have to give that to the judge. The judge has to evaluate if that's an appropriate amount and then ask Kyle if that's an appropriate amount. Kyle could then do a couple different things. He can either agree or he can say, no, it's not an appropriate amount. It's too high. Here's why. In which case he has to show the books.
Right.
Or he could just ignore it and be held in contempt.
Yeah. So, well, what do you put the odds on? He's just going to ignore it.
99.99%.
I don't know anything about it, but that's just from looking in from the outside. That's, that seems to be something this guy likes doing.
Yeah, he tends to not confront his problems face on. He tends to basically, think that he's 7 steps ahead of everybody else. He's not. And this court case showed this because I did everything legally. I did everything correct. I have not just 1, but 2 lawyers working on this because I have my main lawyer and then he has a senior partner that's been helping out with this on the case to make sure that everything's been done step by step legally with no possible way he can kind of get out of it. So we've taken extraordinary measures to make sure this is done right. Plus, we figured this might be a court case that YouTubers in the future might look to and say, this is what happens when you get involved in a partnership with somebody on YouTube. Whether you have a formal writing or not, it doesn't matter. This was a verbal that would have been the same either way. So having in like a formal DBA didn't make any bit of difference. But the big thing is if somebody has primary control over that account, the primary owner, they seem to have all the power in that business partner arrangement, because if they remove somebody from that channel, which again was breach of fiduciary duty, you have to go to court over it. So I think this is a good lesson for people that want to get involved in YouTube and have a partnership on a channel. There needs to be a better way for YouTube to have that done, because if not, one person has that controlling power over it regardless.
Yeah, it is kind of dangerous. Even giant corporations have gotten in trouble when they fired someone and they just stole their codes and they had to go to court or something to get it back.
What do you do? What do you do when you have somebody who owns an account that has all the passwords and you fire them and you don't know the passwords?
Yeah, I know, right? But that has happened. I don't remember which company it was, but it was someone big, and that guy just kept spamming out shit, and it was quite funny actually. But I think we've gone over everything, right?
Yep. Yeah, I think so. And like I said, once again, I really want to appreciate it. You were the first person to actually try to signal boost this. No, it's funny because I've been involved in the atheist community for a long time, even though I'm not atheist. People know I'm agnostic. I'm the Pope of agnosticism, and I do a lot of philosophical stuff. And even though all my atheist friends, though, none of them wanted to touch this. Only one, and I'll give props to him if I can. Jim Hall from Atheist Edge, thank you very much for your support, because he was willing to go against the grain, because people know Kyle was an atheist. And they were not going to hold him accountable for anything. And I find that to be just dogmatic, ideological. And the same thing people complain about theistic, religious dogmatists out there that are fundamentalist. What's the difference? If you're not going to do what's right and just and moral, and you're not going to do what is clearly in the best case, evidentially, then why are you going to consider yourself to be a skeptic or critical thinker? And this is the problem I had with a lot of people that just either not so much didn't want to get involved, but actually stood by him.
This is why I don't consider myself part of any community. I just do me.
And I don't blame you. I don't either. I promote critical thinking. I'm not about promoting atheism or even skepticism, because the way people use that word is different from I use it. But I think critical thinking is important. And if you are a proper critical thinker, then you should eventually get to the right decision.
Yeah. All right. And on that note, I guess we should put an end to this.
Yeah, thank you very much. And thank you guys for watching. And please let me know what you think of the video, The Death of Non Sequitur Show. Leave a comment on it if you need to get a hold of me. And I really appreciate it.
Yeah. And you got the Twitter address there in the chat and everything. So go check that out. Anyway, that's about it. So thanks everyone for your support and your super chats and your time. And I will see you next time. Bye.